I'm a circus performer who survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion, and this is my story. Before I begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. It was 3:42 p.m. when it happened. I was upside down, 30 feet in the air, when the world turned upside down with me. The canvas of the big top rippled as though caught in a sudden windstorm, but the air outside was dead calm. My body knew something was wrong before my mind did, muscles tensing mid-routine as the silk ribbons swayed beneath me. My name is Lena Vasquez, aerial silks performer for Cirque Lumina, on our third month of a North American tour in Meridian City. 15 years of contorting my body through impossible positions had taught me that sometimes survival depends on knowing when to hold on and when to let go. But nothing in my career had prepared me for what crawled out of the sky that afternoon. I was rehearsing a new sequence for the evening show, suspended in crimson silks, while our technical director, Marcus, adjusted lighting cues. The rest of the troupe was scattered throughout the tent, Dimitri and Sasha practicing their hand-balancing act, Elena working with horses at the far end, clowns huddled near the entrance arguing about timing. The first vibration was subtle, just enough to make the rigging creak. Then came another, stronger, making the silk sway noticeably. "Is someone testing the sound system?" I called down to Marcus. He looked up from his lighting board, confusion evident even for my height. "No, everything's off except the work lights." Another vibration, strong enough that I had to tighten my wrap to maintain position. The horses grew restless, whinnying and stamping. Elena's voice rose as she tried to calm them. "Something's wrong," I muttered, beginning my descent. In aerial work, you develop instincts about equipment failures, about subtle changes in tension that might signal catastrophe. These vibrations felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. I was halfway down when the emergency lights activated, bright red spots sweeping across the tent. The vibrations had become rhythmic, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Everyone out," Marcus shouted. "Could be an earthquake. Move to open ground." But it wasn't an earthquake. I knew what those felt like after 2 seasons in California. This was different, too regular, too deliberate. As my feet touched the ground, Dimitri rushed over, his Russian accent thicker with stress. "The sky, Lena, you must see the sky." Through the main entrance, I saw what had my colleagues frozen in place. The clear afternoon sky was no longer clear, no longer even properly sky-colored. A massive shape loomed overhead, so vast it seemed to cover half the visible horizon. It wasn't a single smooth surface, but a conglomeration of irregular forms that somehow held together, dark against the blue, moving with purpose. "What the hell is that?" Marcus whispered. I had no answer. None of US did. We stood there, a collection of acrobats, clowns, and animal trainers, staring up at what could only be an alien craft, though that term seemed inadequate for the monstrosity above us. Then came the sound, a low-frequency drone that resonated in my chest cavity, making it difficult to breathe. The horses panicked completely, breaking free from Elena's grip and galloping wildly around the tent's perimeter. "We need to get out of here," I said. "If that thing is as big as it looks, we don't want to be under it." Those words broke the paralysis. Our troop began moving toward the exits, grabbing only what they could carry. I snatched my emergency bag from beneath the performer's bench, a habit formed after a tour bus breakdown had left me stranded once. The bag contained basics: clothes, water, energy bars, first aid kit, flashlight, portable charger, and a multi-tool. Outside, the ship extended farther than I'd initially realized, dwarfing the fairgrounds where we'd set up our show. Smaller objects were now detaching from it, descending toward the city center about 2 miles away. Our circus had set up at the edge of Meridian City, in an open fairground area backed by woodland. That positioning now seemed fortunate, giving us a clear view without being in immediate danger. People poured from nearby exhibition halls and food pavilions, faces upturned in shock. Cars in parking lots blared with activated alarms, electronics apparently affected by whatever was happening. "First contact," Marcus said, his tone uncharacteristically uncertain. "Aliens. Has to be." A series of flashes erupted from downtown, followed by rumbling sounds that took seconds to reach us. Not explosions, more like massive electrical discharges. "The circus trucks," I said suddenly. "If we need to move, to get away." "Already on it," said Marcus, tossing me keys. "Take truck 3. I'll get the animal transport ready." Our training kicked in not for alien invasion specifically, but for emergency situations. Circus life had taught us to be adaptable, to solve problems with whatever was at hand. Equipment failures, injuries, venue changes, weather disasters, we'd handled them all. This was vastly different, but the principle remained: assess, adapt, act. I sprinted toward the trucks. Above, the massive ship had begun to emit light from various points, pulses of greenish blue that seemed to scan the landscape below. Truck 3 was one of our equipment vehicles, a modified panel van. I unlocked it, tossed my bag inside, and climbed into the driver's seat. The key turned, but the engine didn't respond, not even a click. Looking around, I saw others having the same issue. None of the vehicles would start. In the distance, I could see people frantically trying to get their cars working. Then I noticed something else. No one was using their phones. People were reaching for them, but their gestures suggested they weren't functioning. Electronics, I realized. Whatever these ships were doing, they were affecting electronic systems. My gaze fell on the Circus's oldest truck, a 1970s model we kept around for nostalgia parade appearances. It had minimal electronics, an analog system that Gabriel, our mechanic, lovingly maintained. I dashed over to it, finding Gabriel already there, turning the key. The engine caught with a roar. "Old school tech," he grinned, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. No computers to fry. Word spread quickly. Anyone with older vehicles or equipment was checking them, while those with modern technology accepted the temporary loss. Our Circus suddenly felt like a strange island of functionality in a disabled world. Many of our tools and systems were deliberately low-tech, kept that way by tradition or budget constraints. Marcus came running up. "The animal truck won't start. We need to move the horses now. Those light pulses are getting closer." The scanning beams had begun to sweep methodically across the outskirts, moving in our direction. Wherever they passed, electrical systems failed. Street lights going dark, cars stopping mid-street. "The woodland trail," I suggested, pointing to the forest edge. "It leads to that nature preserve. There's a meadow about a half-mile in." Elena nodded. "Duh. I saw it when I was running yesterday. Good grazing, water nearby." "Take them there," Marcus decided. "Lena, Gabriel, help Elena with the horses. Anyone with practical survival skills, go with them. The rest of us will secure what we can here and follow if those beams get too close." 5 of us ended up in the woodland group: myself, Gabriel, Elena, May our contortionist, and Tomas our juggler. We quickly gathered supplies, while Elena prepared the 6 horses for travel. I raided the costume department, finding sturdy boots to replace my training shoes, and added a heavy jacket despite the warm afternoon. As we worked, the scanning beams drew nearer. When one passed over the exhibition hall about a quarter-mile away, the building's lights died instantly. More disturbingly, a small plane in the sky above suddenly lost power and began to glide downward, eventually disappearing behind buildings. We all watched in horrified silence, unable to know if the pilot had managed to land safely. "We need to move," Gabriel said. "Those beams will reach us in minutes." We had the horses ready, each carrying improvised packs of supplies. Elena led the way with her most trusted mare, Bella, on a lead rope. The rest of us spread out along the line, keeping the horses moving steadily toward the tree line. The woodland embraced us, the afternoon sun filtering through spring leaves to create dappled patterns on the dirt path. We'd gone perhaps a quarter-mile when we heard it, a high-pitched sound unlike anything I'd experienced before. It cut through the forest ambience, rising and falling in a pattern that seemed almost like language. "Communication, maybe," Gabriel suggested. "Between the ships or between whatever's inside them." The thought of beings inside those massive vessels, beings intelligent enough to cross interstellar space, sent a chill through me. What did they want? Why were they here? The meadow when we reached it, matched Elena's description perfectly. About 3 acres of open grassland surrounded by dense forest, with a small stream cutting through its eastern edge. The horses relaxed visibly as they entered the space. We set up a basic camp near the stream, using skills that came naturally to circus performers. We were used to creating temporary homes, to making comfort in unfamiliar places. Gabriel rigged a simple alarm system using fishing line and metal cups, low-tech but effective. May and Tomas collected firewood, though we decided against lighting it until darkness. The alien ship remained visible through gaps in the forest canopy, its impossible bulk hovering over Meridian City. The scanning beams continued their methodical pattern, now covering the fairgrounds where our big top stood. I thought of our colleagues still there and hoped they'd found shelter. As the afternoon wore on, smaller craft descended toward the city center. They moved with deliberate purpose, positioning themselves above key locations: the power plant, the hospital, government buildings downtown. They're targeting infrastructure, Gabriel observed, passing me binoculars. Methodical. Through the lenses, I could see one of the smaller craft. It wasn't a flying saucer or anything resembling human aircraft. Instead, it looked almost organic, with irregular protrusions and surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal caught in a freeze frame. "They're landing," I said, watching as one craft extended what looked like tendrils toward the ground below. Or sending something down. We couldn't see exactly what was happening in the city, but the pattern was clear. The ships would position themselves, extend these tendrils, and then lights within targeted buildings would flicker before going dark. "What do they want?" May asked, her voice small. None of us had an answer. We were circus performers in the woods, as far removed from understanding an alien invasion as possible. As dusk approached, we lit our small fire, keeping it low and sheltered. In the city beyond the forest, lights had gone out sector by sector, until only isolated glows remained, probably from emergency generators or non-electrical sources. "We need information," I said finally. "We can't stay here indefinitely, but we can't go back blindly either." "The old radio," Gabriel mentioned. "In the 70s truck. It's a simple crystal set. Might still work even if other electronics are fried." "I could go," I offered. "I'm fast. I know how to move quietly. I could be there and back before dawn." "I'll go with you," Gabriel said. 2 is safer than 1. We decided to wait until full darkness. The others would maintain the camp, keeping the horses calm and the fire concealed. If we weren't back by noon tomorrow, they would assume the worst and move deeper into the nature preserve. As the last light faded, I changed into the darkest clothing I had: black practice leggings and a navy hoodie. Years of performing had taught me to move silently, to control my breathing, to blend with shadows. "Stay low, stay quiet," Gabriel instructed. "If we get separated, meet back here. Don't wait, don't come looking." We left the relative safety of the meadow just as true night settled. The alien ship was now illuminated from within, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The forest path was challenging in the darkness, but circus performers are accustomed to navigating difficult spaces with minimal visual cues. My body remembered the way, feet finding purchase on the uneven ground, hands occasionally brushing trees for balance. About halfway back to the fairgrounds, Gabriel suddenly gripped my arm, pulling me down into a crouch behind a fallen log. I followed his gaze and saw it, a light moving through the forest ahead of us, not the consistent beam of a flashlight, but a pulsing glow that seemed to float between the trees. The light paused about 50 yards ahead, hovering at head height. Then it divided, becoming 2 identical lights that moved in different directions, sweeping the forest in a search pattern. One light began moving in our direction. I pressed myself lower behind the log, eyes nearly closed to minimize reflections. Years of performing had taught me how to control my body completely, how to hold position without trembling, how to slow my breathing to near imperceptibility. The light stopped just on the other side of our log. From this proximity, I could see that it wasn't just a light, but a small floating sphere about the size of a softball, with luminescence coming from within. It hovered silently, occasionally emitting brief pulses of that high-pitched sound. For a terrible moment, I thought it had detected us. Then, responding to some command we couldn't perceive, it moved away, rejoining its counterpart before both lights continued deeper into the forest. The fairgrounds came into view just after midnight, the silhouette of our big top stark against the night sky. From our position at the forest edge, we could see that the place was not as we left it. The scan beams had clearly passed through. All permanent buildings were dark. But more concerning were the new additions. 3 smaller alien craft had landed in the central area, and there were beings moving about. Not human, decidedly, unmistakably not human. In the dim light cast by their vessels, I could make out tall, spindly forms that moved with an almost liquid grace. They appeared to be examining the fairground structures, particularly our circus equipment. "The truck," Gabriel whispered, pointing to where our vehicles were parked. The 1970s model was still there, apparently untouched, at the far edge of the lot. "We'll need to circle around," I replied. "Use the exhibition hall for cover." We reached the exhibition hall without incident and paused in its shadow to assess the final approach to the truck. About 50 yards of open ground separated us from it, the most dangerous part of our journey. "Wait," Gabriel said suddenly, pointing toward the main entrance. "Look." A group of humans was being led into the area. About 20 people, walking in a strangely orderly fashion, escorted by 2 alien beings. Even at this distance, something seemed off about their movements, too coordinated, too precise. "They're controlling them somehow," I whispered. "Like puppets." The human group was taken to one of the alien craft, where they stopped in perfect formation. One by one, they were approached by a different type of alien being, shorter, with multiple limbs that seemed to shift and reconfigure as needed. "They're examining them," Gabriel said, "studying them." We watched as each human was thoroughly inspected, the alien appendages moving over them with clinical precision. Some were then led into the craft, while others were directed to remain outside, still in that same unnaturally perfect formation. "We need to move now," I said, "while they're focused on whatever that is." We waited for a moment when all the visible aliens were oriented away from our position, then sprinted across the open ground toward the truck. My heart pounded, but my feet remained sure, trained by years of performances where a misstep could mean serious injury. We reached the truck without being spotted. Gabriel carefully opened the driver's side door and reached under the dashboard for the radio unit. It was an old CB radio, the kind popular with truckers in the 70s, simple analog technology. Gabriel disconnected it with practiced movements, adding its handheld microphone and antenna wire to his pack. Just as he finished, one of those high-pitched communications sounded, much closer this time, coming from just beyond our truck. We froze, pressing ourselves against the vehicle's metal body. An alien being walked into view. Up close, it was even more otherworldly. Its surface seemed to shift slightly, as if its form wasn't entirely solid. Multiple limbs extended and retracted as needed, and what might have been its sensory organs pulsed with subtle light. It paused near our position, extending what appeared to be a scanning device over the truck. I held my breath, wondering if the metal would shield us from detection. Seconds stretched into an eternity as the being methodically examined the truck. Then, abruptly, it turned away and moved toward the big top. We remained motionless until it was well out of sight. "That was too close," Gabriel breathed. "We need to go. Now." Our return journey through the forest was tense but uneventful. Dawn was breaking as we approached the meadow, the first golden rays filtering through the trees to touch the dewy grass. Our companions greeted us with relief. While Gabriel set up the radio, I recounted what we'd seen at the fairgrounds. "So they're taking people," Elena said quietly, "studying them. And controlling them somehow," I added. "But not everyone, they seemed selective." Gabriel worked on the radio, extending its antenna and carefully tuning through frequencies. Most yielded only static, but occasionally we caught fragments of human voices, emergency broadcasts, military communications, civilian frequencies. Confirmed landings in major cities worldwide. Authorities advise sheltering in place. Avoid contact with the visitors and any humans who appear to be under their influence. Military response has been ineffective. Weapon systems compromised. EMP-like effects rendering most modern technology useless. Reports of selective abductions, medical and scientific personnel, particularly targeted, purpose unknown. One report mentioned something I found particularly relevant. Optical technology seems unaffected. Mechanical systems without electronics remain functional. Survivors advised to utilize non-electronic communications and transportation where possible. That's us, I realized aloud. Circus people. We live half in the past using techniques and equipment that haven't changed much in centuries. It was true. Despite the modern lighting and sound systems we employed for shows, much of circus life relied on analog skills and mechanical devices. Rigging that used physics rather than electronics, communications that depended on visual signals during performances, physical conditioning that required no special equipment. So we adapt, Elena said simply. Is what circus always does, no? We find new way. We spent the day organizing our resources and planning. I volunteered for the first reconnaissance mission, set to leave at dusk. My aerial training made me particularly suited for observation from height. I could climb trees with ease, controlling my body in three-dimensional space as naturally as others walked on flat ground. As I prepared, I found myself thinking about the strange selectivity of the aliens. They weren't exterminating humans outright, which they clearly could have done with their superior technology. Instead, they were studying us, controlling some of us, seemingly learning about how we functioned. Be careful, Gabriel said, handing me binoculars. Remember what we heard on the radio? They're taking people with specialized knowledge. Your circus skills might not seem important to them, but if they're studying human capabilities. I nodded, understanding the implication. What might seem like quirky entertainment to humans, contortion, aerial work, balancing, might represent the extremes of human physical potential to an outside observer. I'll stay hidden, I promised. Just observation, no contact. I set off as twilight deepened, following a path toward the eastern edge of Meridian City, where the suburbs began. According to our maps, there was a water tower that would provide an excellent vantage point for observing alien activities without getting too close. The water tower stood at the edge of a residential area. I approached cautiously, checking for any signs of alien presence before beginning my climb. The metal ladder was cold under my hands as I ascended, my muscles easily handling the vertical movement. From the top, the view was both breathtaking and terrifying. The massive mothership hung above downtown, creating an eerie glow that replaced normal city lights. Smaller craft moved in patterns that suggested purpose, gathering at certain buildings, forming formations above others. Most disturbing were the lights moving through the streets, not car headlights, but the same floating orbs we'd seen in the forest, hundreds of them, sweeping through neighborhoods in coordinated patterns. Occasionally, one would pause at a house, and minutes later, human figures would emerge, moving with that same unnatural precision we'd witnessed at the fairgrounds. I raised the binoculars, focusing on one such collection in progress. The orbs seemed to be selective, passing many houses, but stopping at specific ones. As I watched, a new development caught my attention. A group of humans who hadn't been taken, hiding, presumably, made a break from a darkened building, running toward what looked like an older model truck. They almost made it before the orbs converged on them, surrounding them with pulsing light. The humans stopped running, their movements becoming jerky, then smooth in that telltale controlled manner. They turned and walked back toward the building they'd fled from, now moving in perfect unison. I was about to descend when movement at the base of the water tower caught my eye. Something was climbing up, not using a ladder, but moving along the support struts with an agility that reminded me of my own. My heart raced as I looked for a hiding place, but the top of the water tower offered little concealment. I pressed myself against the central tank, hoping whatever was coming wouldn't look in my direction immediately. A head appeared over the edge, human. Thank God, not alien. A young man pulled himself up, moving with the confident grace of someone used to climbing. He froze when he spotted me, clearly as surprised to find someone else here as I was. "You're human, right?" he asked cautiously. "Not controlled." "Fully human, not controlled," I confirmed. Lena Vasquez, aerialist with Cirque Lumina. He blinked, obviously not expecting that introduction. Tyler Chun, urban exploration photographer. I was documenting abandoned buildings when all this started. "You climb," I observed. He nodded. "Parkour, urban exploration, rock climbing. I'm good with heights and tight spaces. Been useful in the last 24 hours. We shared information quickly. Tyler had been downtown when the ships arrived, had witnessed the first landings, the initial human captures. "They're organized by expertise," he explained. "The first ones they took were scientists from the research center, then medical personnel from the hospital. After that, they started going street by street, taking selected individuals from each area." "How are you staying free?" I asked. "Movement mostly. They seem to have trouble tracking humans who don't stay in one place. And I avoid anything electronic, ditch my phone, my camera, everything that might signal my position. Old school all the way." I told him about our circus group, our meadow camp, our use of non-electronic skills and tools. His eyes lit up with recognition of kindred spirits. "There are others like you," he said. "People whose skills or lifestyles kept them disconnected from the technology the aliens are controlling. Craftspeople, wilderness guides, some homeless folks who lived off-grid anyway. They're the ones adapting fastest." "Did you hear about the resistance's theory?" Tyler asked after a while. "What theory?" "About why they're here. Some military types who established a radio network think the aliens are treating Earth like a library, not destroying knowledge, but collecting and categorizing it. Human knowledge, abilities, everything that makes us what we are." It made a chilling kind of sense. The selective capture of specialists, the preservation of infrastructure even as they took control of it, the careful study of human subjects. "So what happens when they're done cataloging?" I asked. Tyler shrugged. "That's the question, isn't it? Do they leave with their collection? Delete what they consider duplicates? Preserve selected specimens and discard the rest?" Tyler eventually told me about resistance efforts forming in various parts of the city. Groups using mechanical communications, non-electronic weapons, and ancient techniques to evade detection and fight back where possible. "They could use people with your skills," he suggested. "Circus performers understand physical capabilities, know how to move in unusual ways, how to use simple machines to achieve complex results." I thought about my troupe back at the meadow, acrobats, aerialists, animal trainers, riggers. People who worked with physics and biology directly, who understood how to communicate without words, who could create illusions and misdirections with nothing but their bodies and simple props. "Maybe we can help," I acknowledged, "if we can establish contact safely." Tyler offered to guide me to one of the resistance meeting points the following night. I agreed, knowing I should return to camp first to report what I'd learned. As dawn approached, we descended from the water tower, moving carefully to avoid detection. Tyler showed me some of his parkour techniques as we navigated the suburban landscape, ways of moving that minimized exposure while maximizing speed. We parted ways at the forest edge, arranging to meet again the next evening. I returned to the meadow camp as morning light filtered through the trees, finding my companions already awake and working on improving our shelters. I shared everything I'd learned, watching their expressions shift from fear to determination. The aliens might be cataloging human capabilities, but that meant human capabilities mattered. Our specific knowledge and skills had value, possibly even leverage. "So we use what we know," Elena said firmly, her hand resting on Bella's neck. "Circus people always survive. Is in our blood, no." She was right. Throughout history, circus folk had adapted to wars, disasters, economic collapses, continuing to perform, to travel, to preserve skills that dated back centuries. Now those same skills might help humanity survive its greatest challenge. That afternoon, we prepared for our next steps. Gabriel modified our communications, using techniques from old circus traditions, flag systems, light signals, rhythm-based codes. Made demonstrated methods for moving that minimized detection. drawing on contortion techniques to navigate small spaces. Elena worked with the horses, training them to respond to the lightest touch, to move silently when needed. I adapted my aerial skills for practical applications, ways to ascend buildings without ladders, to traverse gaps using improvised equipment, to observe without being seen. The techniques I'd spent years perfecting for artistic expression now reimagined for survival. As evening approached, 5 of us prepared to meet Tyler and his resistance contacts, myself, Gabriel, May, and 2 others with complementary skills. The sun was setting as we gathered at the edge of the meadow, checking our minimal equipment one last time. 12 hours, Gabriel remarked, looking at the alien mothership visible through the canopy. That's all it took to turn everything upside down. And 12 hours is all we've had to start adapting, I replied. Imagine what we might accomplish with more time. He nodded, a glimmer of the performer's spirit showing through the survival-focused exterior. We set off toward the meeting point Tyler had described, moving quietly through the darkening forest. I found myself reflecting on how quickly humans were organizing, adapting, finding ways to function in this new reality. Perhaps that adaptability was our greatest strength, the quality that might, eventually, allow us to reclaim our world. I am Lena Vasquez, aerial silks performer, and I survived the first 12 hours of the alien invasion. What I learned in those hours was that sometimes the oldest skills prove most valuable in the newest challenges. The world had been turned upside down, but for someone who lives upside down half the time anyway, that just meant finding a different way to balance. The aliens may have come to catalog humanity, but they were about to discover that humans, especially circus humans, don't fit neatly into any category. And that might just be our salvation.